Welcome to this very special edition of the Kajmasterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through the industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Scott Wozniak, CEO of Swoz Consulting, and he helps leaders build legendary lives and legendary brands. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Thanks for having me, AJ. I'm looking forward to it.
Right. So, Scott, we'll be talking about leadership, as this, ticker says, leadership, purpose, and profit in 2023 and beyond. Now, looking at this particular thing, you coach a lot of CEOs, Scott. And when they come to you, what is it that they want to know about from you, learn about, or fine tune about themselves? Is it about leadership? Is it about purpose? Is it about profit?
Well, I suppose you could say it's about all three, but I will say one thing that's interesting is that most of the time, I don't have people who are passionate about leadership for its own sake. It's leadership to what end, right? Like I'm trying to lead to a place. So where we actually begin is not, hey, how can I change? What are the tactics you need to do better, AJ? What are all the things? We actually begin by saying, what is your dream? What is your goal? What do you want? And if that's where you want to go, and we get really clear on that, then it becomes natural for us to back up and say, okay, well, if that is the life I want, the company I want, then okay, what do I have to do in order to make that more likely? Why do I have to change? And change for its own sake. I mean, okay, so it's the beginning of the year here when we're doing this, right? This is a typical New Year's resolution. Everyone gets excited. I will say one of the lessons we learn, we talk about New Year's resolutions is, okay, we're 20 days into the year here. And this is usually right around the point when we're all getting tired, right? Like we said, hey, I'm going to exercise, or I'm going to do that new thing with my team, or I'm going to write every day, or whatever it is, the new commitment. And then we get motivated, and about 3 weeks into it, this week is, the next 4 or 5 days is when we start saying, maybe I'll skip this day. Maybe my legs are sore. I'm kind of feeling brain weary. I'm going to take a day off, and then 2 days off, and 4 days off. And motivation only gets you so far. Change for its own sake. It's work. Change requires energy. So in order to sustain it, to get past that little hump and crash where most of us have, like a little spike of energy and then crash back to our old life, you've got to have a compelling vision of what it is you want. That's why purpose comes into this picture. What's the purpose? If it's not a big enough, meaningful enough, compelling purpose for you, then all those cool change ideas don't make a big difference. I mean, let's be honest, right? It's not like we're not all exercising because we don't know how, right? It's not that complicated. Like I can get up, I can walk down the street. I know how to do sit-ups. Like these are not things that are too intellectually difficult for us. It's the emotional, mental, like purpose part of the process that usually is that's where we fall flat. So that's where we usually start, is we start with why. What's your why? What's a purpose big enough and meaningful enough that you would want to actually make all these changes? Because otherwise, change is just unfun sometimes. That's typically how it begins. They don't come saying, I'm looking to change because I just want to change. They come with a dream. They come with some sense of like, this is what I have. Now, so that doesn't mean the dream's very clearly defined. Sometimes it's a very vague dream, right? And so we've got to have this whole process of pinning it down. But that's the first big thing to talk about is tell me why you're even interested in talking to me. Tell me why you're even interested in making your company better. Like better, so what?
Right. Now let's look at this. You posted just the latest post that I saw on LinkedIn is about leadership, something from Colin Powell. Leadership is solving problems.
Yes.
And you coach a lot of CEOs, leaders, top brands, a lot of people everywhere across the globe. When they come to you, it means something is not right.
Yeah.
Don't they tell in business schools that leadership is about solving problems? Or is it Mr. Colin Powell has to do it and you have to post it on LinkedIn so that people can read it? All the top guys who are in connect with you, they come to know about it. Why is it that great resignation is happening? Why is it that people are not taking correct decisions, wrong decisions across almost all the fan companies, and
Yeah.
it is leading to job losses?
Yeah.
Where is it about talking about solving problems? You are creating problems. You then, what is it that they come for?
Yeah.
About their own purpose, self-actualization, about leading, enlightened leadership in 2023, or is it about, keeping their bottom lines intact in 2023?
Yeah.
Several things at the same time, Scott. But you are an expert. These are all interrelated. So wanted you to, respond at your own pace and help us understand how should leaders and the genuine ones who want to actually will take forward, how do I as an outsider or as an employee who
Yeah.
is looking at companies and leaderships and whatever they are saying in their day-to-day lives to people, stakeholders, shareholders, how should one take all these things?
Great question, and you're right. All these things are related. Okay, so I'll answer it a couple different ways, and we'll see if we can't triangulate and come down to the core thing you're asking about. Yeah. So first thing I will say is that one of my favorite quotes that speaks to me is that people need to be reminded more than they need to be instructed. Leaders problem solving, right? That's blindingly obvious. Like, well, why is that worth saying? Because sometimes we have to be reminded, oh yeah, that's the job, right? I'm not the first. I'm hopefully not going to be the last who reminds us, guys, this is what you signed up for. Now we think, right, when we're from the outside looking in, the way we often think of leadership and the role is, oh man, now finally that I'm the boss, I get to do what I want to do. I tell everyone does what I say. I get the cushy office and the fancy parking space. And now I'm the man, right? I've arrived and it makes my life easier. And that's not really what the leader's role in the organization is to do. When it's right, like the way it works is leaders take care of the problems that are difficult for other people to solve. I mean, if it's easy, then somebody just solves it right where they're at, right? And when it's, gosh, that one's too hard, I'm not really sure, it's risky, I don't know what to do, they kick it up to their boss. And so when that guy solves it, he's got to solve that problem. He's there to take care of the stuff that the frontline folks maybe are like, I don't have the skills or confidence to figure out, right? Well, guess what? When he has stuff that's too hard for him, he kicks it up to his boss. So what you've got to acknowledge is the higher up you go in leadership, the more problems you have to solve and the harder they are. Because if they're easy problems, then they don't need to bring in their boss. Like good people will just take care of it. And so one of the things I have to say is like, listen, when you have hard things to do at work, that's why you have a job. If there was nothing difficult about it, excuse me, if there were no problems to solve, if there were no stress to carry, then they wouldn't need to pay somebody to do this job, not somebody high level, especially as you move up in excellence and professionalism. Then what you're saying is, I'm willing to take on more and more difficult problems. Now, what you need is a balance, right? Like you can't put me, somebody who has new and had no experience and just figuring this out, and give them the hardest problems in the company. Then they're going to be overloaded. You also don't want to be in a position in your life and career where you have tons of skill and experience and you've developed and you've taken on easy problems. I find that to be actually painfully boring. The actual sweet spot in a career is not no problems. It is problems that match the level of skill and experience that I have. And so I don't want to be way overstressed and way overloaded where I have, too much work to do or too difficult things to do, or it's all on my shoulders and I have no team support. Like that's bad. But I also don't want to be in a place like we think, oh, if I could just get rid of all these problems and only have easy things to do at work. Can I tell you, AJ, that feels really good for about 2 weeks. And then somewhere around 3-4 weeks into it, it starts getting frustrating and boring. And so I find the great resignation, this quiet quitting that's going around, happening in two
Right.
ways. I find it
Right.
two problems. Either the bosses are unwilling to take care of their problems and they're just like, don't bother me. I'm going to go, I only do easy things. And they're overloading their people. And so their people are too stressed out. They have too much to do with not enough support. And the bosses are not setting them up for success. Or it's the other problem. The bosses are not challenging their people. They won't let them make real decisions. They're saying, no, 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 you can't handle this. And their people are like, I'm ready for more. Give me more. And either way creates this gap where I am not okay with my job. And so then you're like, well, I still want a paycheck. So people, I don't endorse this. I don't think it's the high integrity path, but they say, hey, I'm just going to show up and do the bare minimum and try not to get fired as long as I can. But again, it's not one or both. It's not just it's too hard, or it's not just it's too easy. Either one can do it. And so this is the job of a leader. Maybe this is, we talk about leaders problem solving. This is the ultimate problem to solve. Finding the balance, which means I got to get to know each one of my team. Or if I'm a team person, I got to put my hand up and say, hey, boss, I think I can handle more, or man, I think I maybe could use a little help here. But you're trying to find the balance to say that the level of the problem and the level of the person match. And when those two match, and you get, well, there's a psychiatrist who made this term flow famous, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and he wrote whole books and articles on this. And he says the state of flow is when you lose the sense of time and you get just kind of absorbed in your task. And there's a sense of deep satisfaction, and it may demand of you. It's work, but excuse me, but it's the kind of work that you feel fully alive doing it. And that work, he says, is when the skill and the challenge match. So that's what we're looking for. So problems aren't bad. Too many problems are bad. Too few problems, though, are also bad. This is what we're signing up for, is to say, hey, give me the kind of problems that match my skills. Give me interesting problems, but not too much. And so, yeah, to bring it back where I started, shocking. No, that's not, I didn't make that up, right? I learned it from my mentors, and I'm just passing on. And man, can I just confess, AJ, a lot of what I post online, most of the vast majority of what I post online is stuff that's coming out of my own reading and study, my own mentors, the books I'm processing. And it strikes me, and I'm like, dang it. That's right. That's real. I can't forget that. And so then I write it down for myself. And so I have a little note file where anytime something meaningful strikes me, I take it out of the book I'm reading, or the online article I got it from, or maybe the friend who told me, and I write it down, and I'm like, that one, I gotta have to chew on that one. That's a good one for me to remember. And then that's where I post out of, is when I'm reviewing those notes, saying, okay, yeah, Scott, you got to remember, don't get mad when you have problems to solve. That's the job. Without problems, you'd actually be bored. So then I pull that out and I post it online. Yeah, we need to be reminded more than we need to be instructed.
Absolutely. And perhaps it's time for leaders to be reminded of many things. It may be even, Colin Powell's quote also, and maybe also about that leadership, purpose, and profit. Are they so different things at the same time? Are they so different that they will not meet? Or is it, why can't they go hand in hand in a time? If people can handle 5 phones at the same time,
yes,
are these things too much to ask for?
No, I completely agree. And I think we get unhealthy when we try to separate them and say profit without a purpose. Well, then you start getting into exploitative practices, right? Where you're just squeezing your staff or cheating the people that you're trying to serve. Like, no. If you can combine these two, right? Profit with a purpose. And people sometimes mistakenly think, oh, I have a noble purpose, so therefore I'm not we make no profit. We give it all away. Like, actually, that purpose isn't going to last very long. So I spent a lot of years working for a family, a man here who launched a restaurant chain called Chick-fil-A, and they are the largest fast food chain in the United States, just past McDonald's, domestic US only. So they're phenomenally successful here. But he's famous for saying, in our own organization, excuse me, that there is no mission without a margin. There is no purpose without profit. Like if you have a purpose that matters, then you need to figure out a long-term sustainable way of funding that purpose. And so he's done some phenomenal good in the world. But so yes. And of course, what's the point of leadership as we started without like the leading is to what end? Well, it's to create this purpose, to create a system that when they all come together, then you're right, man. I think you said it and said it well. Why are they so separate? What if we brought them all together and started thinking about these three things as three strands in one cord, right? They kind of need each other to stay strong. That metaphor actually is one I like to use a lot. That a three-strand cord is not easily broken. Well, if you pull any one of those three strands apart, you can snap it pretty easy. This is just actual physics, right? But you wrap three strands together, and it's not just a little bit stronger. It's exponentially stronger when you combine these things. And so yeah. If you want to do a fun exercise, one of the things you can do is you can stop and like rate yourself. How's my leadership doing? My influence skills, my people abilities, right? How's my purpose doing? My vision to think forward down the road, and am I trying to do something noble? Am I clear definition of it? And how my profit doing? How efficient and tight am I managing today? The numbers. And so you get the people and the systems and the purpose, the vision, and you can kind of do. In fact, here's my challenge to all the listeners. If anybody's watching this, right, listening to this, saying, hey, rate yourself 1 to 5. 5 is I'm doing awesome. I'm just killing it on this. 1 is like, okay, I haven't thought about that at all in a while. I'm kind of probably not even investing in it, right? So somewhere in the middle, maybe you are. And then, okay, why did you give yourself that number? And then you go back and say, okay, if I could move one of these 1 level up, what would that look like? Sometimes the mistake we make is I got to get to perfect 5. And then I get overwhelmed with all the changes. And I don't know if I'll ever get there. Like, well, maybe you were a 2 in one area or a 3. Well, what would it look like to go to a 3 or maybe a 4? Just what would 1 step higher look like? And then maybe that's the plan for the next 90 days for you, is just say, I'm going to tweak this one thing up. I'm going to spend a little extra time on my leadership, talking about my team, influencing them. Maybe I'm going to tune in regularly to AJ's stuff and really make myself think better. And I really need to think about my profit. Maybe I should run an extra report and look at it every week to track a certain number in my team, or maybe my personal performance. I'm going to get my numbers up. And so whatever that is, man, these 3 things, you can just kind of every 90 days go back and rate yourself and say, how am I doing? How am I doing? How am I doing? And you just keep nudging it. And man, if you did that, I mean, there'll never be one day anything night and day changes. But this time next year, you tune in early 2024, you might be in a night and day different place. A lot can change if you just make tiny little tweaks all year long.
Right. Scott, now let's look at this way, that the business school education has not helped. There is so much of problem. Economy is having problems. Leadership is having problems. As you said, great resignation and the quite quick quitting that's happening.
Yeah.
And wherever now people were not doing anything out of these 2, the companies are laying them off. So that makes it full circle for everyone. Why is it this problem? You talk to a lot of people. You speak across the globe. So many people, the problem of leadership is real, just like several other things on this planet. Is it time? Because you talk about building, creating legendary lives and legendary brands. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people who would want to always do that. But then you also talk about that on the other side of fear is what you want. Are these all problems because our leaders, especially business leaders, they are fearful, they want control, but they don't want to, look within. Yeah. How do you see this? What is the way out? That means the business schools have not worked all together. Your work increases. You got a lot on your plate, Scott.
Yeah. No, listen, I have a business school degree and I did learn a lot in that process. So I'm not saying that they're total waste. There is some real value, the skills they learn. But first, not all not all degrees are equally the same. Some programs are better than others, and even the best programs, they can't teach you everything. So what they tend to teach you, you named it, AJ. I love the way you said it. Fear is a human thing. This is not unique to business leaders. All humans wrestle with fear. It's one of the fundamental problems we have to deal with. Well, one of the ways a lot of business schools, not all, but a lot of them try to solve that is, hey, listen, we will teach you control systems. And so the whole business school program is focused on how do you control your organization? Here are the numbers. Here are the pay systems. Here are the tactics, equipment. I mean, all the stuff that they kind of go into, and it's very heavily driven on company control systems. What they're dodging is this fundamental idea of, no, at the heart of it is taking risk. Now, that's not to say, people make this mistake. They think risk taking means you are reckless. Risky is reckless. That's not the truth. What leadership should be about, the very best mentors I've had taught me that leadership was about calculated, carefully protected, hedged risk. You stack the bet. You don't just take a random risk and roll the dice and hope it works. You say, okay, if it goes wrong, here's our downside. We're ready for it. And we're going to do the math, not math to control it, math to say, okay, at least it's a disproportionate risk, right? Like we have a better possible return than it's going to cost us. We're going to do this. But there's all sorts of smart ways to risk. Like one of the lessons I learned from another of my mentors said that, listen, before you fire any cannonballs, you should fire a lot of bullets. Little bitty risks, and then see which ones are hitting the target. And then you go fire cannonballs at that target. Like don't load it all up and bet the farm every time and hope it's going to happen. So there are skills, learning how to risk skillfully, but at the heart of it is a mentality and a mindset that allows us to say, hey, we're going to be okay. Now, here's back to business schools. Here's part of the problem. A lot of times people go to business schools because they're smart academically. And the academic system rewards you for getting the correct answer and punishes you for making mistakes. And so a lot of times we have these students who their identity is tied up in, I don't make mistakes. I mean, we're going to get deep and psychological here, right? We're talking about fear. It comes down to this question, like, why do you like yourself? I mean, maybe that's the big question for all of us to wrestle with today. Why do you like yourself? When you like yourself, because sometimes I don't. When I do, why? And I have to confess, early in my career, I mean, part of even when I was doing this business school stuff and all of it, part of the answer was because I'm smart and I can get good answers and I got a good brain. And in the process of that, when I finally started getting to the level academics where I didn't get all A's and it started not going well, I remember being like, I don't know who I am and if I'm okay with myself if I'm making mistakes for the first time in my life. And this is the problem, is the solution is often work harder, control it tighter, right? And then this guy goes and gets his first time job as a leader. And he's thinking the solution for this fear, all this company pressures on me, these people are waiting on me, is tight control, no mistakes, no mistakes. And it's like, no. It is in the zone of risk that we learn. It's in the zone of risk. Now, risk smart, risk wisely, risk carefully. It sounds weird to say risk carefully, but that's the way you do it. And in that, we come alive and our teams come alive. And so what happens then is they're afraid. They try to over control. They won't admit mistakes. Then you let the failures go too long. Then our staff. So all that to say, fear is so critical. It is underneath a lot of what we do. And ironically, the leader who won't admit that they're afraid can't bring their team in. That we're afraid that once we're vulnerable. This is the last piece on fear I'll say here. Maybe we're afraid of saying that we're afraid to ourselves and to our team. And we think when I admit I don't have it all together and I'm scared, hey, I'm nervous about this, I'm stressed too, that my team's going to turn away from me. And the irony is when humans do this well, the vulnerability actually draws people to us. We're kind of endeared to like the leader. Now, if you're a total idiot and you're like, hey, I just blew the whole company, like, okay, that's not exciting. But But there's a difference between being incompetent and being anxious, right? Like, hey, I'm giving it my best shot, guys, but I'm still nervous. That will actually draw your team to you, not push them away from you. And so yeah, all that to say, yes, man, I think a lot of the leadership mistakes I see in companies are leaders trying to cover up and avoid any sense of fear. They think leading like I have no fear, and that is not, it's false, and it actually hurts your leadership, and you get stuck in problems longer because you can't admit troubles. And you said it. The more powerful quote is, on the other side of this fear, it's painful, but if you're willing to go through it, on the other side of this fear is all the great stuff we want. It's the people who are willing to brave that crossing that get the results.
How do we, trust such leaders in our lives then? In our jobs? How do we, because whatever happens to their leadership, whatever happens to their purpose, whatever profit, but my life, a lot of lives depend on such individuals who are at the helm of the affairs.
Yes.
And how do I go forward? Because as an individual, you don't interact with them personally. You only look at or hear about their decisions. You execute those decisions.
Yeah.
How do I decide my way forward as a common person or a common employee?
Well, the first thing I would say is that we have a major responsibility to choose our leaders wisely. And that's not usually how we think about it, right? Like it's usually like, oh, the leaders happen to us and we got to manage it. And we do. We can talk about that in a second. But we have a lot more choice than we think. A lot of people feel like they're stuck in their job, even back to the quiet quitting or great resignation, right? They feel stuck, and like, you're not actually stuck. Very, very few cases, people don't have a choice, but I mean, like, very few. There are other jobs. There are other places. You can even physically get up and move. There's a lot of option where you can make changes. Now, will that require work? Is it some risk on your part? Yes. But we choose our jobs. And too many people go into their careers, especially because, well, it's what my friends are doing. It's what my uncle knew a guy, and my uncle says I should go work for this company. And we didn't thoughtfully, carefully select our leaders, not just the company. Select the leaders you want to work for. I would much rather work for leaders in a less prestigious company who are good leaders than a big famous company with bad leaders. In the long run, you're going to have a much better experience, learn more stuff. So that's my first challenge is, where you can, choose your leaders very carefully. They make a big impact on your life. Choose them wisely, thoughtfully, put as much effort into interviewing them, so to speak, as they're putting into interviewing you. And then the next part about it is this: you can only control what you can control. One of the big mistakes in life, I've wrestled with this, I'm learning how to be better, is we spend a lot of our effort stressing and trying to think about and worry about the stuff that's outside of my control. I can't control the traffic on the road. I can't control the weather. And at a certain level, I can't control what my boss is going to say or do. I can only control my response. How am I going to handle myself? How do I show up? And so if I both when I can, choose the bosses carefully, and then really focus on managing my sphere with excellence. And then, like, listen, the world's going to happen. Government leaders, I can vote, I can make a choice, but hey, sometimes the guy I voted for didn't go through. Then I just show up with excellence and manage my sphere. And I have to learn to say, that stuff is not mine. This is what God has given me. This is the space that I've been appointed and allowed to have some influence in. And I'm just going to have to trust that God. And so I happen to be a man of faith. I would say that God is at work in the larger sphere. And I'm going to have to let that go. So that combination of, like, worry about only what I can control. And one of those things, don't forget, you get to choose your boss. I think time after time that has saved me from a lot of stressful scenarios. Maybe one last comment on this. I will say some of the best learning lessons on leadership I ever got were from really bad bosses. I've had a few really bad ones. I've had a few really, really good ones. But I think I learned more from my bad bosses on what not to do. Like, oh, why is that so painful? And like taking that to heart, those can be really powerful growth experiences if you're open to learning.
Right, right, Scott. But what about, leaders who actually are good, but actually don't know about things? There's something called knowing about yourself, self-realization,
Yeah.
rather than, self-actualization and all that stuff. First is about self-realization, like you did. You see, you were a stage actor, singer,
Mm-hmm.
and you just did not go there just by the force of nature. You actually have a college degree in musical theater performance. You
Yeah,
were quite serious about it,
I
and
was.
then you realize that you have something to do beyond this. You had that understanding of what you wanted for yourself.
Yeah.
Then you went back to school, and then you had MA in organizational leadership. That's something, learning, unlearning, relearning, new learning. Is it time for leaders? And it's not that you are just anybody. Even today, you are member of Mensa, International High IQ Society.
Right.
You read 200 books a year. Who can do that? So, looking at your life, the way you have taken decisions, left things which ones mattered to you, but actually you had to make a choice.
Yeah.
Is it time for leaders to go back to school? Not business school, but any school, maybe your school, you know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, Swoz Consulting, wherever it is, but so that not only they make their lives better, but also it's about a huge number of people who are dependent on leaders wherever they are today.
Yeah. Listen, for all of us, leaders or not, I think we are most alive when we are learning. Humans are learning machines. It's what we were designed for. I mean, unlike a lot of animals, right? Most animals are born and within 15 to 30 minutes, they can get up, they walk around, they have their instinct for finding the food they're supposed to find. I mean, within several months, they're fully hunting an adult. I mean, this is normal animal behavior, right? Humans are born, we can't even move properly, right? We can't literally, our brain hasn't yet connected that I can put my hand in my mouth. And there's a moment, if I've got 4 children, there's a moment when all the kids discover, oh man, I can shove this thing in my mouth and suck on it. This is exciting. It takes months to figure that out. Why would we be born with such a deficit? Because what we give up with all those hardwired instincts is that we get a brain that is a learning machine. Everything we are is learned, and our capability of learning is far more than most people think. And I love what you're saying. We should go back to school, but maybe not a formal school. I mean, yes, I have gone back to formal school and benefited greatly from it. But constant learning, this is what we were made for. And when humans quit that, right? When we we kind of arrive and get into our life, and then we stop reading and we stop listening to shows like this and we stop processing, I think some part of our brain atrophies and who we are kind of, settles down and loses its power. There is life in learning. And so I would say all of us have an obligation, not just an obligation like you duty, you ought to, like a joy and a delight in waking that part of our life back up and learning. And there has never been a better time. Never. I mean, a show like this would be the kind of elite thing that 50 years ago, you would have to pay a lot of money and go into a special classroom, and only the top of the top students in the nation would be able to get access to you. And now, if anyone wants to just turn on their device, they can get this. So this time to get world-class thought for free at all the time, like if we're not learning now, what are we doing, right? Like we are missing an opportunity for life. Now, that's for all humans. If you're a leader and you're listening to this and you're a leader, AJ's point's right. There are a lot of lives dependent on you. It is not okay for leaders to take the pay and the perks that come with leadership, excuse me, and not do the learning responsibility that comes with leadership. We have to be at our best. A lot of people depend on us showing up well. So learning. I mean, it is, yes, occasionally I think there's a formal program. We do have formal programs at my company where you can learn about employee engagement and customer experience and all this cool stuff that makes your organization world-class. But there are programs like this. There are books that you can listen to. And by the way, for books, I both read hard copies. I've got, books on my desk here. But I also do a lot of audiobooks where while I'm driving, I'll just have a book going on, listening and processing that. And so there's lots of ways to slide this into your life without
You have also got podcasts, 2 of them.
That's right. That's right. You can check out my podcasts. And so there's all sorts of ways to get cool content that don't require you to pay a lot of money or quit your job. I mean, you got to do laundry around the house, right? I mean, that's a boring chore that doesn't require a lot of your brain. Put some headphones on, listen to a great podcast or a show like this while you're doing the dumb stuff. And it makes laundry less boring and you grow as a human. So there are so many things available. And man, yes, learning as leaders is leaders should be learners. I mean, they should be the same thing. And any leader who's not a learner is not doing right by their people. It's just not an option anymore. There's no excuses. So yeah, it's a huge passion of mine to just continually be pushing myself and learning.
Right. And the unfortunate part today is that machines are learning more and humans are perhaps learning less.
Yeah, we got to keep up, man. If we don't, right, we'll all just got to be sitting around staring at the wall while the robots do our work.
How do you manage to read 200 books per year? I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah. So some of it is I do a lot of travel, right? I speak into places. And so while I'm traveling, it's part of how I keep myself busy. But a big part of it is this. The human brain is capable of listening a lot faster than most of us realize. And so over time, it took me 7 or 8 years to do this, but I slowly pushed my speed, and most of the audio players on your device have a little section where you can increase the playback speed.
Right.
And I started fiddling with that until eventually now I listen to most of my audiobooks around 3 to 3.5 times regular speed. And I mean, I actually process it. I'm listening, I'm making sense, I'm taking notes. Like I legitimately understand it at that speed. And so, maybe not everybody can get the 3 times speed super fast. It took me several years, but my guess is most everybody could immediately take their playback speed to like 1.5 times and process it. Now, maybe it's a stretch, but that's right. Stretch your brain, right? Learn how to learn. Maybe this is one of the ultimate learning skills. And so think about this. If I'm driving to my office, if I'm traveling, sitting in airport lines or waiting, at the hotel lobby, and you just start listening to books at 3.5 times speed, if you can get 30 minutes, let's say an hour a day, then 3.5 hours, relatively speaking, of listening a day. Most audiobooks, business-wise or life and learning, are about 8 hours. So in less than, every 2.5 days, I am finishing another book. That's if I'm just sitting around, it's just driving and doing chores and traveling once every week or two. I mean, it's like, I'm not sitting in my chair for hours and hours on end doing nothing but reading. I just filled the empty time with audiobooks and then cranked up the playback speed. And that's probably 75% of the books I read. It's just fast audiobooks. Then yes, I do have hard copy books like the one I just showed here a second. I'll read those from time to time, but yeah, it's not as hard as you think. Not if you go audio and increase playback speed.
Right, Scott. Right. And so people who want to connect with you to learn and to earn better, and make lives better. I'm talking about leaders here. How do they do that?
Well, the simple way is to go to my website, which is www.scottwozniak.com. That's SCOTTWOZNIAK.com. And you can come see my stuff. You can come check out my company and all the cool tools we have. That is www.swozconsulting.com. That's SWOZ consulting.com. And either between scottwozniak.com or swozconsulting.com, you can see links to my podcasts, my books, the programs we offer. But that's all my fun stuff. I'm on LinkedIn as well. And so if you look up Scott Wozniak and leadership, you'll see me on LinkedIn. So yeah, lots of fun places to find me. But yeah, love to help anybody who wants to go deeper on any of this.
Right, Scott. Right. Now, I cannot leave you without asking about your, India visit. You have worked in
Yeah.
India. Tell us about that.
Oh man. So I had a friend who's doing a conference for business leaders. It was in Bangalore. And so we went down in that area and ended up spending about 10 days around the area. While we were there, we did a bit of sightseeing, spoke at 2 different conferences, actually went and connected with some churches. So I think I mentioned I'm a man of faith, Christians, my background. And so spoke at some Christian churches while we were there as well, did some workshops for them. And man, I ended up connecting with a dear friend, and we started a company that did some business back and forth with the US and India. And it kicked off really just kind of a long-term friendship and partnership there. So yeah, I love India. Now, I ended up, because my connections are all Bangalore based, all southern India is where I've been. I've not physically been to the northern India area, so I've got to get there. That's next on my list. But yeah, I'm telling you, like, you don't know, right? India is far bigger than most Americans. Like, they think, oh, you visited India. Like, hold on. Which part of India? What are you talking about? You could spend years exploring just one corner of it. So yes, I do love the Indian people, though. It's been some dear friends, some great business. But that was, goodness, that was 10, 12 years ago, I think, when we did that first trip that kicked off a whole bunch. So yeah, it's one of my favorite places on the planet. So yeah.
Right, right, Scott. Great to learn about this aspect of your work life. And you must have learned a lot of things from friends here, from the
Indeed.
from the places that you visited. My last question to you, Scott, is that from the stage as an artist, and then as a business leadership coach, you coach a lot of people, a lot of guys, and you also meet a lot of artful dodgers in the name of leadership.
Yes.
And you have planned your life well, you have lived your life well,
Mhm.
perhaps the way you wanted it to, and you took the amount of risk
Hmm.
that was needed. You are learning every day, every moment, as I understand it. After all these things, from the stage to, as I said, the Artful Dodgers, and seeing the world as it
Oh,
is in 2023, how do you see uh, going forward in terms of where exactly now you want to reach from here?
good question. Um, yeah. So ironically, um, after a life on the stage, when I went into business and strategy, I kind of walked away from a public brand. And so I actually didn't have a website for a long time. My podcast, I didn't do any of that stuff. I wrote a couple books, but I actually didn't even promote them. It was just, I couldn't resist the ideas. I liked the writing process. And I kind of was thinking, like the pendulum swung too far the other direction, right? I was like, I'm just here to help other companies. I don't really care about my own image. And so what I've come back to, really, as of just even a year ago, is realizing, I think some of the way I need to help people is by allowing a public brand again, like allow myself to be. I haven't done shows like this. I mean, a year ago, I wasn't doing this stuff. I wasn't making myself available. So starting, that's one of the things that I'm learning. Like, okay, what does it look like to build a brand? It was 20 years ago when we did not have cool shows like this. There was no YouTube. LinkedIn hadn't been created, right? So I did a lot of live events, but we didn't do social media online, any of the podcasts. So I am discovering that world and figuring out, how do I share the stuff I'm learning? I'm living this life that I always dreamed of. How do I make that as a learning lesson to other people, invite them into the journey, help them see that process? So that's one of the number one things I'm trying to figure out, is how to have something of a public relationship with people, that, because I'm still going to do live events, but that not limit myself to live only. And so related to that, I'm launching another book. I've got my 4th book coming out. And so I launched podcast just a few months ago. So I'm pretty fresh to this world, trying to figure out how you do mass communication now. So that's one. And then honestly, the real vision for me is I love launching other leaders. And so my life has hit a level of success that kind of has exceeded some of my dreams. I'm going to keep playing and doing cool things. My next level of joy is about finding people who are starting companies, starting ministries, young leaders who are starting their careers, leaders who have got a company and they're like, man, I feel like we could be great, but I don't know how to get there. So I don't know if you're familiar with the King Arthur legends with the Knights of the Round Table and all that stuff. Well, behind King Arthur was the wizard Merlin, who kind of helped him build his Camelot. Honestly, AJ, that's my passion right now. I feel like I want to be a Merlin to the Arthurs of the world. I want to help them build their shining Camelot, the glorious golden city on a hill. They've got a dream, and man, I got to build my dream. Now I'm excited about seeing other people achieve their dreams. And so that's really where my life's gone. It's like, okay, let's help more people and let's help those people reach their dreams. And so it's not about what can I get from me. It's how can I help them get the dreams they always wanted. So that's where I'm at, man.
Right. I saw that, you are Merlin. I saw that review on another podcast which says he is Merlin.
I will take it. That's awesome.
Right. And ease is in larger words. So that's a great thing. And it's nice talking to you, Scott.
Thanks. You too.
With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed.